And more breaking news coming in. The Operational Coordination Center of the main directorate of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine in Kyiv received a report of a fire that had broken out in the Oblon district of the capital. The nearest fire and rescue units arrived at the scene immediately. Upon arrival, the fighters found that the hit of an unknown object caused partial destruction. Cutting across to Samiksha as we stay with these pictures. Samiksha, we have been witnessing such scenes, and these are pictures once again indicating of residential areas being hit in Kyiv.
Well, absolutely, Suyesha. Multiple visuals that have been accessed by the public only go on to prove how the Russian troops have been targeting the civilian areas. Another visual on our screens right now that shows the aftermath of the shelling by the Russian troops in Kyiv. In fact, that is a residential building that seems to have been hit as a result of airstrikes by the Russian troops. Now, remember, this comes on a day when we are looking at the talks between Russia and Ukraine, which will take place virtually, though, between the delegates of Russia and Ukraine. Now, remember, Zelensky had earlier also pressed on having a direct talks with Vladimir Putin as well, but of course that did not transpire. We are looking at some sort of resolution when it comes to the peace talks that will happen today itself. But in the backdrop of all this, constant shelling and airstrikes continue unabated across Ukraine, and those are the visuals we are getting right now from Kyiv region. Now, remember, also this comes as the Russian troops have been advancing towards the Kyiv region, so situation there absolutely grim. Suyesha.
And Samiksha, on this point, let me also bring in our guest, Patikrit Payne, who is joining us on the broadcast. Patikrit, important to understand how you're viewing the developments as on date. About 2.5 weeks that the war has been ongoing. And then, of course, we've seen the kind of statements and the changing statements by the leaders. Today, the fourth round of talks is expected between Ukraine and Russia. And then again, we see how US and China are also now playing an important part. Your take, Patikrit.
Are no doubt facing resistance in some of the major cities and especially in Kyiv. And one of the key reasons for that is the kind of arsenal that the NATO countries have actually offered to have given to Ukraine in terms of Stinger missiles and the Javelin missiles. So what the Russians are trying to do right now is very apparent that they're trying to destroy the critical security infrastructures and the critical economic infrastructures of Ukraine and debilitate their ability to run the administration as usual. And it's also apparent that they're asking for the civilians to evacuate and also bombing civilian areas, which seems that Russia wants to control these regions, and it's not just about regime change, which initially a lot of people had thought, because there is resistance today. So it's not just about changing the regime. So far as the talks are concerned, I think Russia will insist on the 3 to 4 key points that they have stated from day one. That is to change the constitution of Ukraine and making it very clear that they will remain neutral and not join NATO. Number 2, recognize the regions like Donbas region, the 2 republics which has been recognized by Russia now, Donetsk and Luhansk, and recognize Crimea as part of Russia, and also to stop aggression and fighting on the part of Ukraine as well. So far as the talks are concerned, I think it's very difficult for Zelensky to actually accede to all these points. Then it becomes a political liability for him to convince his own people as to why he went for the war if he had to accept those demands. But there are limited choice for Zelensky as well, because he's not getting the kind of support that he had expected from NATO. So far as the talks are concerned between Russia and China, or US and China, America is asking China not to support Russia in any way. Russia has a shortage of critical spare parts, especially in the aviation sector, because Airbus and Boeing have suspended or sanctioned them. They are also probably looking for a lot of combat-related spare parts. And I think they're looking for China to take a lot of their natural resources and the minerals, and especially oil, to help them in some way shore up their economy, which is right now faltering because of the sanctions. We have to see whether China will accede to those points or not, because one simple reason is China has the upper hand today. They are not going to accept everything that America will ask them to do, because they have a lot of sanctions being imposed by America on China as well for several other reasons. So today we see that as of yet the war was limited to Kyiv and the eastern part of Ukraine. Now they have started hitting Lutsk and Ivanov, that region, Ivan Frankivsk in that which are near to NATO countries like Romania, Hungary, or Poland. This means these are the regions from where the supplies were coming from NATO, and Russia is trying to prevent those supplies by hitting those installations. And we have to see what happens if they cross the border somehow.
Yes.
It becomes a NATO versus Russia direct conflict, so because these regions are very near to the border. So we are at a critical stage. We might also see
it is a critical stage indeed, Pratikrit, and the very fact that Russia is intensifying the offensive in Ukraine. But where exactly is this headed as far as the fourth round of talks are concerned, considering the first three rounds have not really led to some fruitful result? We'll talk more about this, Pratikrit. For the moment, a 1-minute report.